Right now, as you're reading this, there's someone living rent-free in your head. You wake up and they're the first thing your mind reaches for. Before coffee, before your phone, before you even fully open your eyes. You go through your day trying to function like a normal human being, but there's this low hum underneath everything, a background noise you can't switch off. And at night, when everything gets quiet, that hum becomes a roar. You've told yourself you're over it. Maybe you've even convinced other people that you're fine. But we both know the truth. You're not fine. Not yet. You rehearse conversations in your head that will never happen. You catch yourself checking their social media not because you expect anything, but because you're addicted to the tiny hit of information it gives you. You analyze every message, every silence, every word they ever said like you're a detective trying to crack a case that has no solution. And the worst part? You know it's not helping. You know this is consuming you, but you can't stop. Here's what I need you to hear right now before anything else. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are not pathetic. What you're experiencing has a name, a mechanism, and, most importantly, a way out. This isn't a guide about forgetting someone. It's not about pretending they never mattered or forcing yourself to feel something you don't. This is a complete, science-backed, deeply human roadmap for reclaiming your mind, rebuilding your identity, and stepping into a version of yourself that doesn't need anyone else to feel whole. By the time you reach the end of this, you'll understand exactly why your brain can't let go. And more importantly, you'll have the tools to change that. Not someday, starting today. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The brutal truth about why you can't let go. Let me say something that might sting at first, but will ultimately set you free. The reason you can't stop thinking about this person has almost else could ever make you feel the way they do. I know that's hard to hear, especially when everything inside you is screaming that this person was different, that what you had was rare, that nobody else could ever make you feel the way they did. But here's the truth. What you're experiencing isn't a testament to the depth of your love. It's a testament to the power of your neurobiology. Your brain doesn't know the difference between losing someone and losing oxygen. When you form an emotional attachment to another person, your brain begins producing a powerful cocktail of chemicals: dopamine, norepinephrine, oxytocin. These aren't soft, gentle emotions. These are neurochemical forces. Dopamine creates craving and pursuit. Norepinephrine creates that electric, can't eat, can't sleep obsession. Oxytocin, the bonding hormone, literally rewires your sense of self around another person. When that person disappears from your life or becomes unavailable, your brain doesn't process it as heartbreak. It processes it as a crisis, a threat to survival. Your system goes into withdrawal, desperately seeking the next hit of the neurochemical experience they provided. Think about the moments when they gave you attention. That electric feeling, like suddenly the world had color again, like you could breathe more deeply, like you mattered. That wasn't just emotion. That was your brain being flooded with dopamine. You weren't falling in love with them as a person. You were becoming chemically dependent on the feeling they triggered in you. And now that feeling is gone. So your brain does what any addict's brain does. It obsesses, it seeks, it replays every moment looking for clues about how to get that feeling back. But the addiction isn't just chemical. It's behavioral. Every time you check their Instagram, you strengthen a neural pathway. Every time you replay that one perfect conversation, you dig the groove deeper. Every time you allow yourself to spiral into the "what if we got back together" fantasy, you're essentially injecting yourself with the drug again and making the addiction stronger. Here's the evolutionary layer that makes this even more complicated. Thousands of years ago, losing a partner wasn't just painful. It could be fatal. You needed your tribe, your person, your unit for physical survival. So your ancient brain developed a ferocious mechanism to fight for lost bonds, flooding your system with stress hormones, obsessive thoughts, and desperate urges to reconnect. The problem is that your brain hasn't updated its software since the Stone Age. It cannot distinguish between "I lost my hunting partner on the savannah and I might die," and "I lost someone I was seeing for 6 months in 2024. To your nervous system, both feel like a matter of life and death. Now add intermittent reinforcement into the mix, and you have the most potent psychological trap imaginable. Intermittent reinforcement is exactly what it sounds like. Sometimes you get the reward, sometimes you don't. And it's the most addictive pattern in human psychology. More addictive than consistent reward. More addictive than consistent rejection. It's why slot machines are more addictive than games where you always win. If this person was sometimes warm, sometimes cold, sometimes attentive, sometimes distant, your brain didn't just get attached. It got hooked. The unpredictability made every moment of connection feel like a jackpot. And jackpots are unforgettable. Then there's the fantasy bond. Perhaps the most insidious trap of all. You didn't just fall for who this person actually was. You fell for who you believed they could be. You saw glimpses of their potential, moments of beauty, depth, vulnerability, and your imagination filled in the rest. You constructed a version of them that was more complete, more consistent, more loving than the reality ever was. The tragedy is that you're not just grieving a real person. You're grieving a person who never fully existed, and it is infinitely harder to release a fantasy than a reality, because fantasies never disappoint you, never contradict you, never give you a reason to stop loving them. Finally, if this relationship involved dramatic highs and lows, intense connection followed by distance, warmth followed by coldness, you may have developed what psychologists call a trauma bond. These bonds are forged in emotional chaos. They activate your survival instincts. They make your nervous system believe this unstable, unpredictable person is essential to your well-being. Trauma bonds don't feel like unhealthy attachment. They feel like destiny. Understanding all of this doesn't just give you insight. It gives you permission. Permission to stop blaming yourself for not being able to just move on. Your attachment isn't a character flaw. It's a predictable, documented, neurological response to a specific type of conditioning. And what was conditioned can be reconditioned. Chapter 2. How your brain becomes your own prison. You've probably had the thought, why can't I just think about something else? If sheer willpower could fix this, you would have fixed it by now. The reason you can't simply decide to stop is because obsessive attachment doesn't live in the rational part of your brain. It lives in the ancient, emotional, survival-driven parts that don't respond to logic. Let's walk through exactly what's happening inside your head, because understanding the mechanism is the first step to dismantling it. Your brain has a system called the default mode network. The mental activity that runs in the background when you're not focused on something specific. In a healthy, emotionally regulated brain, the DMN helps you daydream constructively, reflect on your experiences, and plan for the future. In an obsessively attached brain, the DMN becomes a torture chamber that loops the same content on repeat. Conversations you've already had, scenarios that haven't happened, questions that have no answers. This isn't you being dramatic. This is your default mode network being hijacked by the most emotionally intense experience in your recent life. Neural pathways are the brain's equivalent of roads. Every time you think about this person, you travel the same mental road, and that road gets wider, smoother, faster. Neuroscientists describe this process with the phrase, neurons that fire together, wire together. You've been firing the thinking about them neurons so consistently, so intensely, that the road has become a freeway. Your mind defaults to it automatically, unconsciously, the moment your attention isn't actively engaged elsewhere. Your anterior cingulate cortex, the part of your brain responsible for detecting conflicts and errors, is also involved here. When someone you're attached to becomes unavailable, this region lights up as if something is broken, as if there's a problem demanding your immediate attention. It's not a metaphor. Your brain literally experiences their absence as a malfunction that needs to be corrected. And then there's dopamine. And this is where it gets particularly cruel. Dopamine isn't released when you get what you want. It's released when you anticipate getting what you want. So every time you imagine them texting you, every time you fantasize about an apology, a reconciliation, a moment of being truly seen by them, your brain releases dopamine. You get a reward for hoping, which means every daydream, every fantasy, every what-if is neurochemically reinforcing your obsession. Your amygdala, your brain's alarm system, interprets their absence as danger. Not metaphorical danger, real physical danger. It floods your body with cortisol and adrenaline. This is why you feel physically ill when you think about them, why your chest tightens, why you can't sleep. Your body is preparing to either fight for this person or flee from the pain of losing them. You're in a state of low-grade emergency all day, every day. Your prefrontal cortex, the rational, logical, let's think this through calmly part of your brain, becomes progressively weakened under chronic emotional stress. This is why advice like, just be logical about it, or they weren't right for you anyway, doesn't land. The part of your brain capable of accepting and acting on that logic has been temporarily overwhelmed by more primitive systems. Here's something that might surprise you. Sleep isn't helping you forget them. During sleep, your brain consolidates memories, but it prioritizes emotionally charged memories. So every night, while you sleep, your brain is literally reinforcing the neural connections related to this person while allowing less emotionally intense memories to fade. The more you feel about them, the more your sleeping brain holds on to them. The result is a self-perpetuating rumination cycle. You think about them too. You feel intense emotion. The emotion generates more thoughts. The thoughts generate more emotion. And so it goes, deeper and deeper, each revolution strengthening the pattern. One small trigger, a song playing in a coffee shop, a scent, a street corner, a specific time of day, can activate what psychologists call an intrusive thought chain, an automatic sequence of memories, feelings, and mental images that can consume hours before you even realize it started. The key insight here is this: your obsessive thoughts are not evidence of exceptional love. They are evidence of specific, identifiable brain processes. And brain processes can be changed. Chapter 3. Why this particular person became impossible to release. Not every person who enters your life creates this level of psychological grip. So why this one? The answer isn't that they were uniquely extraordinary. The answer is that they, probably without even knowing it, triggered a specific set of psychological vulnerabilities that created the perfect conditions for obsessive attachment. The unavailability factor is the most significant. Your brain is hardwired to work harder for uncertain rewards. Consistency is comforting, but not compelling. Unpredictability, on the other hand, is neurologically electrifying. When someone is reliably warm, reliably present, reliably available, your attachment system relaxes. When someone is inconsistent, close one day, distant the next, present one week, gone the next, your attachment system goes into overdrive. You weren't more attached to this person despite their unavailability. You were more attached to them because of it. The hot and cold dynamic creates what attachment researchers describe as an anxious activation loop. When they pulled close, you felt relief and euphoria. When they pulled away, your nervous system flooded with alarm signals. Your brain's primary goal became restoring closeness, not because closeness always felt good, but because distance felt like dying. If this pattern repeated enough times, your nervous system essentially learned to stay in a permanent state of attachment anxiety, always scanning for signs of warmth, always bracing for withdrawal. Emotional peaks create stronger memories than emotional plateaus. A relationship characterized by dramatic highs and crushing lows doesn't just feel more intense than a stable one, it is more intense, neurologically speaking. Extreme emotional states trigger higher concentrations of stress hormones and bonding chemicals, which means those experiences are burned into your memory with extraordinary clarity. Your nervous system prioritizes them as significant, important, unforgettable, and they are. The idealization trap works like this. They showed you enough of their best self, their depth, their humor, their vulnerability, their potential, to make you believe you were seeing their true self. But they didn't show it consistently enough to prove it was reliable. You filled the gaps with your own imagination. You fell in love not with who they were on their average Tuesday, but with who they were in their most luminous moments, and with who you believed they could become with time and the right love. This isn't naive. This is human. But it means you're now grieving not just a person, but a possibility, a version of them that you believed in more than they believed in themselves. Future promises, whether explicitly stated or merely implied, create some of the most powerful attachments of all. If this person talked about what you'd do together someday, about the kind of relationship you could have, about changes they were going to make, your brain attached to that future as if it were already real. When the future didn't materialize, you didn't just lose them. You lost an entire life you had already begun to inhabit in your imagination. The rescuer dynamic deserves special attention. If this person had visible pain, struggles, or wounds, and if you felt called to help them, heal them, be the person who finally understood them, then your attachment went beyond romantic connection. Your identity became intertwined with being their safe harbor. You weren't just attached to a person, you were attached to a purpose. And when they left, you didn't just lose a relationship. You lost a reason to exist in a particular way. Shared vulnerability creates bonds that feel almost sacred. If you revealed parts of yourself to this person that you'd never shown anyone else, if they witnessed your unedited, unguarded self, then losing them feels like losing the only witness to a significant chapter of your life. It can feel like that version of you is now invisible, unacknowledged, erased. Here is the most important reframe in this entire chapter. This person didn't become impossible to forget because they were perfect for you. They became impossible to forget because they activated psychological patterns that were already inside you. The intensity of your attachment is data about your nervous system, your attachment style, your unmet needs, not a verdict about their irreplaceability. Chapter 4. The Real Cost of Staying Stuck. Let's have an honest conversation about what this obsession is actually taking from you, not the emotional cost. You already feel that every single day. I'm talking about the tangible, concrete, measurable losses that accumulate silently in the background while your attention is consumed by someone who isn't thinking about you the way you're thinking about them. Because here's the thing about obsessive attachment that nobody talks about enough. It doesn't just hurt, it steals. It steals your cognitive capacity first. Your brain has a finite amount of processing power available at any given moment. Scientists call this cognitive bandwidth. And right now, a significant portion of yours is permanently occupied, running background processes about this person, replaying, analyzing, hoping, dreading, rehearsing. The result? You're operating at maybe 60% of your actual intellectual capacity. You walk into rooms and forget why you're there. You read the same paragraph 4 times without absorbing it. You sit in meetings and realize you haven't heard a word in 10 minutes. You make careless mistakes at work, the kind you'd never normally make, because the part of your brain responsible for focus and executive function is busy running a loop about someone who has moved on. This isn't a minor inconvenience. This is your potential being quietly drained, day after day, while you stand there wondering why you feel so exhausted and foggy. It steals your sleep, and everything sleep is supposed to repair. You lie down at night, and the silence becomes unbearable. Your mind, freed from the distractions of the day, goes straight to them. You replay the last conversation. You imagine alternate endings. You check your phone one more time, just in case. And when you finally do fall asleep, hours later than you should, the dreams often continue what the waking mind started. Chronic sleep deprivation doesn't just make your memory, your judgment, your mood, your memory, your judgment, your mood. You're fighting this battle with one hand tied behind your back, and the sleep deprivation is the rope. It steals your relationships. Think about the people in your life who actually love you, who are present, consistent, available. Your friends who've listened patiently to the same story for the 15th time. Your family members who sense something is wrong but don't know how to reach you. The people who invite you places and hear, "I'm not really feeling up to it," again and again. Obsessive attachment makes you emotionally absent from the people who are physically present in your life. You're at dinner with a friend, but you're mentally rehearsing what you'd say if this person texted right now. You're at a family gathering, but you're scanning the room, wondering if anyone there knows them. The people who deserve your full presence get the leftover version of you, distracted, half-engaged, emotionally unavailable. And slowly, quietly, those people stop reaching out as often. Not because they don't care, because they can sense you're not really there. It steals your physical health. Stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, when released chronically, are not benign. They create inflammation. They suppress immune function. They disrupt digestion. They create muscle tension that manifests as headaches, jaw pain, neck stiffness, and back problems. They alter your appetite, either killing it entirely or driving you toward emotional eating. You might have noticed that you don't look quite like yourself right now. Your skin is different. Your energy is different. Your body is carrying the weight of this obsession in ways that go far beyond the emotional. It steals your professional momentum. While you're checking their profile at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, you're missing the window to respond to that email that could have changed your trajectory. While you're mentally composing messages you'll never send, your competitor is building the skill you've been meaning to develop. While you're emotionally unavailable to your own ambitions, opportunities pass by like trains you didn't even notice pulling into the station. Career growth requires sustained attention, creative energy, and the willingness to take risks. All three are significantly compromised when your primary mental and emotional resource is being poured into a situation you cannot control. It steals your creative life. Creativity requires spaciousness, open mental territory where new ideas can form, connect, and surprise you. Obsessive thinking colonizes that territory completely. The book you are going to write, the project you are excited about, the creative risk you are finally ready to take. All of it goes on indefinite hold because you don't have the inner space for anything new to grow. It steals your decision-making clarity. When you're emotionally dysregulated, every decision becomes harder. Not just decisions about the relationship, but decisions about everything. Should you take that job offer? Move to a different city? End a friendship that isn't serving you? Make a financial investment? You hesitate. You second guess. You defer. Because the part of your brain responsible for clear, values-aligned decision-making has been compromised by chronic emotional stress. It steals your self-esteem, one day at a time. Every morning you wake up and they haven't reached out. Feels like quiet confirmation that you weren't enough. Every time you see them living their life without apparent difficulty, some small voice inside you whispers, "See? They're fine. You were the problem." Every day of silence chips away at your sense of worth until you start genuinely believing that the absence of their attention means something fundamental about your value as a person. It doesn't. But when you're in it, it feels absolutely convincing. It steals your future relationships. When you eventually meet someone new, someone who is present, consistent, genuinely interested in you, you won't be able to fully receive them because you'll be comparing. They'll say something kind and you'll think, but they never made me feel the way they did. They'll be reliably available, and part of you will find that boring because your nervous system got calibrated to intensity and chaos, and calm consistency doesn't trigger the same neurochemical response. You'll sabotage something real in pursuit of a feeling that was never as healthy as it felt. And finally, it steals your time, your most irreplaceable resource. Every hour spent ruminating, analyzing, hoping, and waiting is an hour you will never get back. Not a day, not a week. People spend months, sometimes years, in this fog, and one day they look up and realize that, come back. Your life is happening right now. Your life is not in the past where this person lives in your memory. Your life is not in the imagined future where they come back. Your life is happening right now, in this present moment, and it deserves your full presence. The cost of staying stuck is too high. It's time to start paying attention to what you're actually paying. Chapter 5. The Identity Crisis. Nobody warned you about here is the dimension of this experience that goes deepest, the one that makes just moving on feel genuinely impossible, not just emotionally difficult. Somewhere in the process of becoming attached to this person, you stopped being fully yourself. And you might not have even noticed it happening. It's subtle at first. You start paying attention to what they find funny, and you begin finding those things funny too. You develop opinions about things you'd never thought about before because they cared about them. You adjust the way you present yourself, your style, your opinions, your interests, in ways that feel natural, but are actually calibrated, consciously or not, to maintain their interest and approval. This is normal human behavior. We are social creatures who adapt. The problem isn't that you were influenced by them. The problem is that when influence is driven by fear of losing someone rather than genuine resonance, you don't just grow, you disappear. The merger phenomenon describes what happens when two people's identities begin to fuse. You stop thinking, "What do I want?" and start thinking, "What do we want?" You filter your future through the lens of this relationship. Your individual dreams become conditional, dependent on whether they fit into a life that includes this person. And when that person is no longer in your life, you don't just feel heartbroken. You feel formless, like you've lost the structure that was giving you shape. The purpose collapse is particularly devastating when this person had struggles you felt called to support. If you became their emotional anchor, their confidant, the one person who really understood them, then your attachment wasn't just romantic. It was functional. You had a role, a reason to show up each day in a particular way. You mattered because you were needed. When they left, they didn't just take themselves, they took your sense of purpose with them. Your internal narrative fractured. Before them, you had a story about your life, where it was going, what you wanted, what kind of person you were becoming. That story naturally, gradually incorporated them. Your imagined future included them so completely that when they were removed from the picture, the whole narrative collapsed. You don't just not know what comes next. You don't know who the protagonist of the story even is anymore. Social identity is a real and significant loss that often gets overlooked. If people in your life knew you as part of a unit, as someone's person, then your social identity shifted when the relationship ended. You went from being us to being me, and that transition is disorienting in ways that go beyond the personal. You have to reintroduce yourself, in a sense, to your own social world. Your emotional regulation system became externally dependent. Instead of learning to soothe yourself during difficulty, to celebrate your own wins, to sit with discomfort independently, you offloaded those functions onto this person. Their presence calmed you, their approval validated you, their attention regulated you. They became, in the language of psychology, an external emotional regulation system, which means that without them, you genuinely don't know how to feel okay. Not because you're weak, but because you never had to learn. They were always there to perform that function. The reflection trap is when your self-perception becomes entirely mediated through someone else's eyes. You felt beautiful, when they found you attractive. You felt intelligent when they valued your perspective. You felt worthy when they chose your company. Without their gaze, you can no longer see yourself clearly. And the uncertainty of that is terrifying. Here is the most important truth in this chapter. The grief you're experiencing right now isn't only about losing them. It's about losing the version of yourself that existed in relation to them. That version of you is genuinely gone. And grief for lost identity is just as real, just as legitimate as grief for a lost person. You are not being dramatic. You are not weak. You're experiencing a genuine psychological loss that deserves genuine acknowledgement. But here is the equally important truth. Underneath all the layers of merger and codependency and adapted identity, your authentic self is still there. It hasn't been destroyed. It's been buried. And the work of healing is, in large part, the work of excavation, of carefully removing the layers of who you became in relation to this person to rediscover who you actually are. That person, the real you, the you that existed before them and will exist long after, is worth finding. And the process of finding them is one of the most profound journeys a human being can undertake. Chapter 6. Breaking the Loop. How to actually stop the mental spiral. You've tried to think your way out of this. You've tried to logic yourself into a different emotional state. You've told yourself all the right things. They weren't right for you. You deserve better. Time heals everything. And none of it has worked. That's because rumination isn't a thinking problem. It's a habit problem. And habits aren't changed through insight alone. They're changed through the consistent practice of new responses. Let's look at exactly how the rumination loop operates, because you need to understand the mechanism before you can interrupt it. The loop begins with a trigger. Triggers are everywhere and there, often completely unpredictable. A particular quality of afternoon light, the sound of a notification on someone else's phone, a song lyric, a type of car, a stranger's laugh that sounds faintly similar. Your brain has cataloged thousands of sensory details associated with this person, and any one of them can activate the neural pathway instantly, automatically, without your permission. Then comes the intrusive thought, not an invited reflection, an intrusion. It appears in your consciousness the way a pop-up ad appears on a screen, uninvited, immediate, demanding attention. Here is the critical junction. What you do in the next 30 seconds determines whether you spend the next 30 minutes or 3 hours in a spiral. Most people make the same mistake here. They engage. They try to analyze the thought, argue with it, understand it, push it away. But engagement, even negative engagement, even fighting the thought, feeds the loop. It's the mental equivalent of trying to unring a bell by ringing it louder. The engagement cascade goes like this. Why am I thinking about them right now? What does this mean? Are they thinking about me? What if I reached out? What would I say? What would they say? What if things had been different? What if they come back? What if they don't? Each question generates another question, which generates another feeling, which generates another question. And suddenly, 20 minutes have evaporated. The emotional amplification phase arrives when your thinking triggers actual emotional responses. Grief, anger, hope, longing. And those emotions then generate more thoughts as your brain tries to make sense of them. Thoughts and emotions feed each other in a closed loop. Neither one is the beginning. Neither one is the end. They just keep cycling. The relief-seeking behavior is what the loop is ultimately building toward. Your brain creates enough discomfort through rumination that you feel compelled to do something to make it stop. Check their profile, text a mutual friend, drive past a place you used to go together. The behavior provides temporary relief, but it also teaches your brain that the rumination was worth doing because it led to action, which makes the next rumination cycle more likely. So, how do you actually break this? The most powerful intervention happens in that first 30-second window, before the cascade begins. Step 1. Name it without judging it. The moment you notice a thought about them arising, say to yourself, internally or out loud, "I'm having a thought about them. This is normal. I don't need to follow it." This simple act of labeling creates a small but crucial gap between you and the thought. You are not the thought. You are the one noticing the thought. That distinction matters enormously. Step 2. Move your body immediately. Not after the thought, during it. Stand up. Do 10 jumping jacks. Walk to the kitchen. Do a set of push-ups. Physical. Movement interrupts the neurological pattern by changing your body's physiological state. Your brain cannot maintain the same emotional spiral in a moving body as easily as it can in a still one. Step 3. Use the 5-minute rite. When you feel the pull of rumination beginning, set a timer for 5 minutes and write down every thought you're having. Unfiltered, uncensored. What you'll discover very quickly is that rumination feels profound and complex. But when you write it down, you're thinking the same 3 or 4 thoughts in slightly different arrangements. Seeing that on paper breaks the illusion that your circular thinking is productive. Step 4. Practice thought labeling instead of thought engaging. When a thought appears, instead of asking, "Is this true? What does it mean?" ask, "What type of thought is this? Is it a fantasy thought, a worry thought, a grief thought, a nostalgia thought?" Labeling creates psychological distance. It moves you from being in the thought to observing the thought. Step 5. Design your environment strategically. You cannot eliminate all triggers, but you can significantly reduce their frequency. Unfollow or mute them on social media, not because you're weak, but because you're smart. Change your commute route if necessary. Remove objects from your immediate environment that consistently trigger the loop. This isn't avoidance. This is intelligent boundary setting with your own nervous system. Step 6. Time box your rumination. This sounds counterintuitive, but it works. Give yourself a designated 15-minute window each day where you are allowed to think about them fully. Feel everything. Think everything. But outside of that window, when obsessive thoughts arise, you remind yourself, "I have time set aside for this. Right now I'm focused elsewhere." This technique respects the reality that you're not ready to never think about them, but it puts you in the driver's seat of when you do. The neuroplasticity principle is your greatest source of hope here. Every single time you successfully interrupt a rumination spiral and redirect your attention, you weaken the neural pathway connecting triggers to obsessive thoughts. Every time you fail to interrupt and spiral for hours instead, you strengthen it. Progress isn't about never having the thoughts. Progress is about the ratio shifting. More interruptions, shorter spirals, faster redirections. Over weeks and months of consistent practice, the pathway that currently feels like a freeway becomes a dirt road, and eventually, barely a trail. The goal isn't to never think about them again, The goal is to think about them when you choose to, not when your brain compulsively defaults to them. That distinction between compulsive thinking and conscious thinking is the difference between being their prisoner and being free. Chapter 7. The Detachment Process. Your step-by-step path to emotional freedom. Detachment is one of the most misunderstood concepts in emotional healing. Most people hear the word and picture someone cold, closed off, indifferent, someone who has simply stopped caring. That's not detachment. That's numbness. And numbness isn't healing. It's just pain wearing a mask. True detachment means something entirely different. It means you can think about this person, feel genuine emotions about them, even hold warmth for them, without those thoughts and feelings running your life. It means they no longer have the power to destabilize your inner state. It means you've created enough psychological space between yourself and your attachment that you can observe it without being consumed by it. Detachment isn't the absence of feeling. It's the presence of freedom alongside feeling. Here is how you build it, step by step. Step 1. Radical acceptance of what is not acceptance that nothing will ever change, not giving up or resigning yourself to permanent loss. Radical acceptance simply means acknowledging the current reality without spending your energy fighting it. Right now, this moment, these things are true. This person is not in your life in the way you want them to be. They are not thinking about you the way you're thinking about them. The relationship you had, or the relationship you hope to have, is not your present reality. Most people spend enormous amounts of mental energy arguing with these facts. But what if they change their mind? But what if they're just scared? But what if they come back? These are not productive questions. They are resistance to reality disguised as hope. And as long as you're fighting what is, you cannot begin working with what is. Radical acceptance doesn't mean these facts are permanent. It means accepting them right now, so you can stop bleeding energy into resistance and start directing it toward healing. A practical way to do this: write down the current reality in plain, simple language, not cruelly, not dramatically, just factually. Right now, they are not choosing me. Right now, this relationship is not happening. Read it out loud. Notice the resistance that arises. Breathe through it. That resistance is your ego, fighting for the story it preferred. Let it fight. And then gently return to what is. Step 2. The emotional inventory. Obsessive attachment isn't a single emotion. It's a layered, complex tangle of different emotional experiences that have gotten compressed together into one overwhelming feeling of pain. When you start separating the threads, you can address each one appropriately. Underneath your attachment, you're likely experiencing some combination of grief for the relationship or connection you lost, anger at how things unfolded or how you were treated, fear about being alone or never finding something like this again, shame about the intensity of your attachment, guilt about things you said, did, or didn't do, relief, and this one surprises people, that the uncertainty is finally over, and hope, persistent and stubborn, that things might still change. Each of these emotions has a different need. Grief needs to be felt and witnessed, not rushed, not minimized, not fixed. Anger needs safe expression, physical movement, writing, speaking honestly to a trusted friend, not suppression and not direction toward them. Fear needs to be challenged with evidence. evidence of your resilience, your history of surviving difficult things, your capacity to build a meaningful life independently. Shame needs self-compassion, not self-criticism. Hope needs to be gently redirected from them toward you and your future. Take 20 minutes and write about each of these emotions separately. Which ones are loudest? Which ones have you been avoiding? The ones you've been avoiding are usually the ones most urgently needing your attention. Step 3. Cognitive restructuring, examining the stories. You're telling yourself your attachment is being maintained not just by emotions, but by specific thoughts. Stories you tell yourself that keep you tethered. These stories feel like facts, but they're interpretations, and interpretations can be examined and changed. Common attachment-maintaining stories include, "I'll never feel this way about anyone else. I need them to be happy. They're the only person who truly understood me. If I was just better, they would have stayed. Maybe if I wait long enough, they'll come back." Cognitive restructuring doesn't mean replacing these thoughts with forced positivity. It means examining them for logical flaws, stress testing them against evidence and reality. "I'll never feel this way about anyone else." This story assumes that the specific neurochemical experience you had with this person is unrepeatable. But that experience was largely produced by intermittent reinforcement and anxious attachment. What you actually want, deep connection, genuine understanding, lasting intimacy, is absolutely available to you. What you're mourning is a specific pattern of stimulation, not a unique human being who is irreplaceable. I need them to be happy. Ask yourself, were you happy? Consistently, sustainably happy? Or were you experiencing intense highs punctuated by painful lows? Examine the evidence of your actual experience, not the curated highlight reel your memory keeps playing. "If I was just better, they would have stayed." This one is particularly insidious because it gives you a false sense of control. If it was your fault, then you could theoretically fix it. But the reality is that compatibility isn't about being good enough. It's about alignment, and alignment either exists or it doesn't. Step 4. Memory rebalancing. Your brain has been doing something called rosy retrospection, selectively highlighting the beautiful moments of this person and this connection while quietly minimizing or forgetting the difficulties, the incompatibilities, the moments of confusion or hurt or unmet need. This isn't dishonesty. This is grief. When we lose something, we tend to remember its best version, but it keeps you attached to a fantasy rather than a reality. Memory rebalancing doesn't mean demonizing them or the relationship. It means achieving accuracy. It means letting yourself remember not just the electric moments, but also the times you felt confused about where you stood. The needs that consistently went unmet, the red flags you rationalized, the version of yourself you had to shrink to maintain their comfort. Write 2 lists, one for what was genuinely beautiful and meaningful about this connection, and one for what was genuinely difficult, painful, or misaligned. Hold both lists at the same time. This is the full picture. This is the person you're actually grieving. Not a saint, not a villain, but a complicated human being who was not fully right for you. Step 5. Future reconstruction. Your brain is holding on to this attachment partly because it cannot see a compelling future that doesn't include this person. You need to actively build one. This isn't toxic positivity. This is neuroscience. Your brain needs evidence that positive experiences exist ahead, that there is something worth moving toward, not just something painful to move away from. Start small. Write down 5 things you want to experience, create, or achieve in the next 12 months that have absolutely nothing to do with romantic relationships. Make them specific. Make them genuinely exciting to you, not impressive to others, not designed to make anyone jealous, but actually aligned with what you care about. Then take one concrete step toward one of those things today, not tomorrow. Today. The action doesn't need to be large. It needs to be real. Step 6. Energetic withdrawal. This might sound unusual, but it's profoundly practical. Every time you think about them, worry about them, send them mental messages, hope for them, imagine their reaction to something, you are directing your energy toward them, and you have a finite amount of energy. Detachment requires consciously pulling that energy back and redirecting it toward your own life. When you notice your thoughts drifting toward them, gently but firmly bring your attention back to what is in front of you, not as punishment, not as suppression, as redirection. Think of it like a financial reallocation. Every unit of mental energy you spend on them is a unit unavailable for building your actual life. You are not depriving yourself by redirecting. You are investing wisely. Step 7. Social detachment. One of the most underestimated drivers of continued attachment is social behavior. Specifically, the ways we keep ourselves informationally connected to someone we're trying to release. Checking their social media, asking mutual friends how they're doing, positioning yourself to run into them, keeping track of where they are and what they're doing. These behaviors feel harmless or even natural, but each one refreshes the attachment. Each one tells your brain, this person is still relevant, still worth monitoring, still a priority. Social detachment means consciously choosing information disconnection, not permanently, not out of bitterness, but as a temporary protective measure while your nervous system recalibrates. You cannot heal a wound you keep reopening. Detachment is not a one-time event. It's a daily practice. Some days it will feel effortless. Other days, the attachment will feel as powerful as ever. Both are normal. Both are part of the process. Progress is measured not by the absence of attachment feelings, but by the growing space between those feelings and your sense of self. Chapter 8. Rewiring Your Brain. The Science of Permanent Emotional Freedom. Here is the most empowering truth in neuroscience. Your brain is not fixed. Even as an adult, even after years of established patterns, your brain retains the ability to form new neural connections, weaken old ones, and fundamentally reorganize how it processes experience. This is called neuroplasticity, and it is your greatest ally in this process. The neural pathways that currently connect thousands of everyday triggers to thoughts about this person are not permanent infrastructure. They are more like paths through a field, created by repeated use, maintained by continued walking, and gradually reclaimed by new growth when you stop traveling them. The core principle is this: every time you encounter a trigger and successfully redirect your attention, you weaken the old pathway. Every time you encounter a trigger and spend an hour in rumination, you strengthen it. You are literally, physically reshaping your brain with every choice you make in those critical moments. The competing pathway strategy is one of the most effective tools available to you. Rather than trying to eliminate the old neural connections, which is like trying to delete a file from a hard drive, You create new, stronger associations that compete for activation. Here's a practical example. If there's a specific walking route you used to take with them that now triggers profound sadness, don't just avoid it forever. Instead, deliberately walk that route while listening to a podcast that fully engages your mind, or with a friend whose company energizes you, or immediately after a workout when your neurochemistry is flooded with endorphins. You are creating a new association between that trigger and a new experience. Over time, the new association competes with and eventually supersedes the old one. Attention training is the foundational practice beneath everything else in this chapter. Your ability to consciously direct your attention, rather than having it hijacked by automatic patterns, is a skill. And like all skills, it improves with deliberate practice. The most effective form of attention training is a specific type of meditation. Not trying to empty your mind, but simply practicing noticing when your attention has been captured by thoughts about them and gently returning it to the present moment, over and over again, without judgment, without frustration, just noticing and returning. 10 minutes of this practice daily builds what researchers call cognitive flexibility, the neurological equivalent of agility. You become faster at catching the drift, quicker at returning to center, more capable of choosing where your attention goes rather than following it wherever habit takes it. The pattern interrupt works by disrupting the automatic sequence before it gains momentum. The moment you notice a trigger, that specific song beginning to play, that particular quality of evening light, that notification sound, you immediately do something that requires physical engagement and mental presence simultaneously. The options are endless. Start a complex mental calculation, recite something you've memorized, do something physical that requires coordination, call someone whose voice brings you into the present. The key is speed, and the key is physicality. You have a narrow window before the cascade begins. Use it. Systematic desensitization is a clinical technique adapted here for daily life. The principle is simple. Gradually expose yourself to triggers in a controlled, calm state, and your nervous system learns that those triggers are not actually dangerous. Start with the mildest triggers, things that produce a small emotional response. Practice staying emotionally neutral while exposed to them. Breathe slowly. Remind yourself you are safe. As you build tolerance, work gradually toward stronger triggers. This process teaches your amygdala, your brain's alarm system, that these stimuli don't require an emergency response. Over time, the song that used to make you pull over your car becomes just a song. The neighborhood that used to feel unbearable to drive through becomes just a neighborhood. The emotional charge dissipates not because you've forgotten, but because your nervous system has updated its threat assessment. Cognitive load training is a remarkably practical technique for acute moments of obsessive thinking. Working memory, your brain's short-term processing space, has limited capacity. When intrusive thoughts arise, you can crowd them out by immediately filling that space with a demanding mental task. Count backward from 300 by threes. Name every country you can think of alphabetically. Mentally walk through your childhood home in precise detail, room by room, describing everything you remember. Plan your ideal travel itinerary in vivid specifics. These tasks aren't distractions in the pejorative sense. They're deliberate cognitive occupancy. They leave no bandwidth for rumination. The Keystone Habit approach recognizes that some behaviors have disproportionate impact on entire behavioral ecosystems. For many people caught in obsessive attachment, the Keystone Habit is checking their phone within moments of waking up. This single behavior sets the neurological and emotional tone for the entire day, often initiating a rumination cycle before you've even had a glass of water. Identify your keystone habit, the one behavior that most reliably initiates or sustains your obsessive thinking. Then design a specific, concrete replacement. If it's the morning phone check, put your phone in a different room at night and replace the first 15 minutes of your morning with movement, reading, or intentional reflection. This single change can cascade into significantly reduced rumination throughout the entire day. The spaced repetition principle reminds you that consistency over time outperforms intensity in short bursts. 10 minutes of attention redirection practice every day for 3 months will produce more lasting neural change than 10 hours of practice over a single weekend. Your brain rewires through regular repetition across time, not through sporadic heroic effort. This means that small, consistent daily practices, even ones that feel insignificant in the moment, are building something profound over weeks and months. Trust the process even when you can't see the progress. Chapter 9. Rebuilding your individual identity, becoming whole again. You've been so focused on losing them that you may have missed what else you lost along the way: yourself. Somewhere in the process of attachment, you drifted from your own center. You adopted preferences that weren't entirely yours. You abandoned interests they didn't share. You filtered your opinions through the lens of their approval. You built a version of yourself around the axis of this relationship. And now that the axis is gone, you're not quite sure which way is up. This chapter is about finding your own center again. Not the version of you that existed for them, but the version that exists for itself. The pre-relationship archaeological dig is where identity reconstruction begins. You are going to excavate the person you were before this attachment took hold. Find a quiet hour and write, freely, without editing, everything you can remember about yourself before this person entered your life. What did you do for enjoyment when there was no one to impress? What did you think about at night before you had someone to think about? What were you working toward? What kind of people did you choose to spend time with? What made you laugh, genuinely, unexpectedly laugh, before your sense of humor became calibrated to someone else? Most people doing this exercise discover two things simultaneously: how much of themselves they lost gradually without noticing, and how much of themselves is still recognizably there, just quieter than before. Both discoveries are useful. The loss reveals what needs to be reclaimed. The continuity reveals that your authentic self never disappeared. It just got buried. Values clarification is the compass work of identity rebuilding. Values are different from goals. Goals are things you want to achieve. Values are principles by which you want to live, the qualities you want to embody, the things that matter to you at the level of character. Common values include freedom, creativity, integrity, adventure, contribution, growth, depth, playfulness, independence, connection, courage, authenticity. When you're clear on your actual values, not the values you inherited from your family, not the values you performed for this person, but the ones that feel genuinely yours, decisions become much clearer. You can evaluate every choice, every relationship, every opportunity by asking, does this align with who I actually am? Reconnecting with abandoned interests is one of the most immediately actionable steps you can take. Make a list of activities, hobbies, creative pursuits, or areas of curiosity that you were interested in before or during this relationship, but set aside. Pick one, not because you're sure you'll love it again, not because you feel motivated, just because it's on the list, and lists deserve action. Motivation, contrary to popular belief, follows action more often than it precedes it. You don't wait to feel like going to the pottery class or the boxing gym or the open mic night. You go, and somewhere in the going, you find a thread of your former self waiting there for you. The friend audit involves taking honest stock of your current social landscape. Which friendships atrophied during your period of obsessive attachment? Who did you pull away from, cancel on, or become emotionally unavailable to? Reach out to one of those people this week, not with a long explanation or apology, just a genuine, simple reaching out. I've been in my head for a while. I miss you. Can we talk? The people who knew you before this relationship carry something invaluable, a memory of who you were. Their presence can help you remember. New goals, unrelated to romance, provide direction and momentum for your emerging identity. Choose goals that excite you, not goals designed to make someone envious, not goals chosen to prove something. Goals that represent genuine curiosity or genuine aspiration. Write them down with specificity. Not, I want to get fit, but I want to complete a 10K by October. Not, I want to learn something new, but I want to be conversational in Spanish within 18 months. Specificity creates accountability, and working towards something concrete pulls you forward in a way that vague intentions never can. The Solo Experience Challenge deserves its own moment of attention because it addresses one of the deepest fears underlying obsessive attachment, the fear of being alone with yourself. Choose one experience this week that you would normally want to share with someone, a restaurant you've been curious about, a museum exhibition, a film, a hike, and do it alone, intentionally. Not as a sad consolation, but as an act of deliberate self-companionship. You will likely feel uncomfortable at first. You might feel self-conscious or sad or acutely aware of the absence beside you. Stay with it, because on the other side of that discomfort is something genuinely valuable. The discovery that your own company is not something to be endured. It's something to be cultivated. Identity is not a destination. It's a practice. You are not trying to arrive at a fixed, final version of yourself. You are learning to remain connected to your own center while life and relationships happen around you. The goal is not to become someone who never needs anyone. The goal is to become someone who never loses themselves in someone else. That version of you is being built right now in every choice you make to return to yourself. Chapter 10, Emotional Regulation, Mastery, Learning to be Your Own Safe Harbor. Here is the core wound underneath obsessive attachment, stated as plainly as possible. You learn to feel okay through someone else, and now that they're gone, you don't know how to feel okay on your own. This isn't a character flaw. For many people, it's a skill that was simply never taught. Nobody sat you down at 15 and walked you through how to soothe your own nervous system, how to validate your own experience, how to generate your own sense of safety from the inside out. You learned, as most of us do, to regulate your emotional state through external sources, other people's approval, romantic connection, the reassurance of being wanted. And for a while, this person was the most powerful external regulator you'd ever found. Emotional self-regulation, the ability to manage your inner state regardless of what's happening outside you, is the deepest and most durable form of freedom available to a human being. It's what this chapter is about building. Understanding your nervous system. Your autonomic nervous system operates in three primary states. The first is sympathetic activation, what most people call fight or flight. This is the state of urgency, alarm, and mobilization. Your heart rate increases, your muscles tense, your attention narrows. This is the state your nervous system has been living in since this attachment became painful. The second state is parasympathetic activation, rest and restore. This is the state of safety, calm, and genuine presence. Your digestion works properly, your creative thinking comes online, your capacity for clear decision-making returns. The third state is dorsal vagal shutdown, collapse, and disconnection. This is what happens when the nervous system has been in alarm for so long that it gives up and goes numb. Many people cycle between sympathetic overdrive and dorsal shutdown without ever spending meaningful time in the parasympathetic window of calm. Your healing work is fundamentally about expanding your access to that parasympathetic state, teaching your nervous system through repeated experience that safety is available to you from the inside. The physiological toolkit. Certain physical practices have direct measurable effects on your nervous system state. These are not metaphorical. They create actual biochemical changes. Extended exhale breathing is the most immediately accessible tool you have. When your exhale is longer than your inhale, you activate the vagus nerve, which directly stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system. Try inhaling for 4 counts, holding briefly, and exhaling for 7 or 8 counts. Do this for 2 minutes when you feel the anxiety of attachment rising. You will feel a measurable shift. Cold water exposure, splashing cold water on your face, or a cold shower, triggers what's called the dive reflex, which rapidly activates the parasympathetic nervous system and can interrupt an acute emotional spiral within seconds. This sounds small. It works remarkably well. Physical movement, particularly rhythmic bilateral movement like walking, running, or swimming, helps discharge the stress hormones that accumulate during sympathetic activation. When you feel the restless, anxious energy of obsessive attachment, movement isn't just a distraction, it's physiological processing. Progressive muscle relaxation involves deliberately tensing and then releasing different muscle groups throughout your body. Start at your feet and work upward. The deliberate release teaches your nervous system what relaxation actually feels like. Because after prolonged stress, many people have forgotten. Emotional granularity, the language of inner life research by psychologist Lisa Feldman Barrett, shows that people who have a richer, more specific emotional vocabulary experience less emotional overwhelm than those who use broad, undifferentiated labels. In other words, the more precisely you can name what you're feeling, the less it controls you. Instead of, I feel bad, practice asking yourself, is this grief, loneliness, anxiety, shame, anger, disappointment, jealousy, nostalgia? Each of these emotions carries different information and calls for a different response. Grief calls for witnessing and gentleness. Anger calls for expression and movement. Anxiety calls for grounding and evidence gathering. Shame calls for self-compassion and perspective. You cannot regulate an emotion you haven't accurately identified. Precision is power. Cognitive reappraisal. Changing the frame. Cognitive reappraisal is one of the most well-researched emotional regulation strategies in psychology. It involves changing not the facts of a situation, but the meaning you assign to them. Their silence doesn't mean you are unlovable. It means you are incompatible, or that they are not capable of the kind of relationship you actually need. Their choice to leave isn't evidence that you are insufficient. It's evidence that this particular pairing wasn't sustainable. The pain you're feeling isn't proof that you'll never recover. It's proof that you loved something genuinely, and that your capacity to love is intact and waiting to be directed somewhere worthy of it. The facts remain the same. What shifts is your interpretation, and interpretation determines emotional response far more than circumstances do. The container practice. When emotions feel too large to process in a given moment, when the grief or the longing feels like it could swallow you whole, the container practice offers a middle path between suppression and overwhelm. Close your eyes and imagine placing the feeling inside a strong, secure container, a vault, a safe, a locked box of your own design. You are not denying the emotion. You are not pretending it doesn't exist. You are simply acknowledging this feeling is real and valid, and I am choosing to set it down temporarily so I can function right now. I will return to it when I have the capacity to give it proper attention. This practice works because it creates a sense of agency in the presence of overwhelming emotion. You are not being controlled by the feeling, you are choosing what to do with it. Emotional surfing emotions, even the most intense ones, have a natural life cycle. They arise, build to a peak, and then, if you don't feed them with more thoughts or suppress them with avoidance, they naturally subside. Most emotional waves, when allowed to run their natural course without interference, last between 60 and 90 seconds at peak intensity. The problem is that most people either try to stop the wave before it crests, which just delays and strengthens it, or they grab onto the wave and extend it for hours through rumination. Emotional surfing means riding the wave. When intense feeling arises, instead of fighting it or following it into a spiral, practice observing it with curiosity. Where do I feel this in my body? How would I describe its texture, its weight, its temperature? Is it changing as I observe it? This stance of curious observation keeps you present with the emotion without being consumed by it, and it allows the wave to complete its natural arc. The opposite action technique, borrowed from dialectical behavior therapy, this technique is deceptively simple and genuinely powerful. The principle: when an emotion is urging you toward a behavior that will reinforce a problematic pattern, deliberately act in the opposite direction. You feel the pull to isolate. Reach out to someone instead. You feel the urge to check their social media. Put your phone down and do something physical. You feel the desperate need to contact them. Write in your journal instead, or call a friend, or go for a run. You feel the flatness of depression telling you to stay in bed. Get up, shower, and step outside. The opposite action doesn't have to feel genuine. It doesn't have to feel motivated or inspired. It just has to happen. Because behavior shapes emotion at least as powerfully as emotion shapes behavior. When you act differently than your emotion is telling you to, you interrupt the cycle and begin to generate a different emotional experience. Building your self-soothing toolkit. Self-soothing is the practice of providing comfort to yourself, not waiting for it to come from outside, but actively generating it from within. Most people find this surprisingly difficult because they've never consciously practiced it. Build a toolkit that engages all five senses. Visual, a playlist of videos, images, or scenes that reliably shift your emotional state toward calm or joy. Auditory, specific music, not sad music you listen to while wallowing, but music that genuinely changes your physiological state. Tactile, textures, temperatures, physical sensations that signal safety. A particular weighted blanket, a warm bath, the physical sensation of sunlight on your face. Taste and smell, specific scents through essential oils or candles, specific foods or drinks that carry comfort without becoming a crutch. The goal is to have multiple options prepared before you need them, so that when you do need them, you're not having to think. You're just choosing from a prepared menu. The emotional check-in practice. Set 3 reminders on your phone throughout the day, morning, afternoon, and evening, that simply ask, how am I feeling right now? What do I need? This practice sounds trivially simple. It is profoundly effective. Most emotional dysregulation happens because we miss the early signals, the small tightening in the chest, the subtle shift in mood, the first hint of anxiety, and don't address them until they've built into something overwhelming. Regular check-ins keep you in contact with your own inner state. They make you the first responder to your own emotional needs rather than waiting until crisis forces you to pay attention. Reparenting yourself, perhaps the most important emotional regulation practice of all, is learning to speak to yourself the way a genuinely loving, wise parent would speak to a struggling child. When you make a mistake, when you spiral back into rumination, when you check their profile after promising yourself you wouldn't, instead of the internal lashing out that usually follows, practice this. Of course, this is hard. You're doing something genuinely difficult. I'm proud of you for trying. Let's just begin again. This isn't weakness. This isn't letting yourself off the hook. This is the kind of steady, unconditional support that makes change actually sustainable. Because shame never built anyone into a stronger version of themselves. Only compassion does that. Chapter 11. Advanced Detachment. Navigating Setbacks, Plateaus, and Breakthrough Moments. If you've been practicing the principles in this guide and you still have hard days, days where the obsession feels as acute as it did at the beginning, I want to say something important directly to you. You have not failed. You are healing. Healing from deep attachment is not a straight line upward. It moves in waves and spirals, in unexpected surges and plateaus. Understanding the architecture of that process is what allows you to navigate it without losing faith in yourself. The wave pattern of emotional healing. Picture your healing not as a staircase, but as an ocean moving toward shore. Each wave moves forward, then pulls back, then moves forward again, each time reaching slightly further than before. The pullback isn't regression, it's the preparation for the next advance. There will be days, sometimes stretches of days, where you feel completely free, where you can think about this person without being destabilized, where your life feels genuinely your own again. and then a trigger will arrive, or a season will change, or a moment of vulnerability will open a door you thought was closed, and the attachment feelings will return with unexpected intensity. This is not evidence that your healing isn't working. This is evidence that your healing is real, because only things that matter to us create waves this significant. Your emergency protocol for the acute moments when you feel yourself being pulled under by an attachment episode, have this sequence memorized before you need it. First, name what's happening out loud, even if only to yourself. I'm having an attachment episode right now. This is temporary. This will pass. The act of naming creates the tiny but critical gap between you and the experience. Second, change your physical state immediately. Cold water on your face, 10 burpees. Step outside. Do anything that shifts your body's physiological condition. You cannot think your way out of a nervous system response. You have to move your way out. Third, reach out to one person in your support network, not to process the situation endlessly, just to hear a voice that anchored you to the present. I'm having a hard moment. Can you talk for a few minutes? That's enough. Fourth, engage in a predetermined activity that requires your full attention. Have this ready in advance, not something passive, something that demands your presence. The 24-hour rule. When you feel an urgent impulse to contact them, make a dramatic decision, or take any action driven by the intensity of an acute emotional state, commit to waiting 24 hours first. Not because the feeling isn't real, it is real, but intense emotional states are, by definition, temporary, and decisions made from the peak of emotional intensity rarely reflect your actual values or your long-term well-being. Give the wave time to settle, then decide from the calmer water. Most of the time after 24 hours, the urgent need to act has significantly diminished, and you'll find that what felt like a necessity was actually just pain looking for relief. The plateau phase. Almost everyone experiences a plateau in the middle of their healing journey. You've made significant initial progress. The acute crisis has passed. You're functioning better. The worst of the obsession has quieted. And then it seems to stop. You feel like you're no longer improving, like the remaining attachment is a permanent feature of your inner landscape. It isn't. The plateau is your psyche integrating the changes you've already made before it's ready to move to the next level. It's consolidation, not stagnation. Continue your practices during this phase, even when they feel mechanical or pointless. The work is happening beneath the surface of what you can consciously observe. Breakthrough moments, and why they sometimes feel frightening. Breakthroughs in this process often arrive unexpectedly and can feel genuinely disorienting. You realize you haven't thought about them in 3 days. You hear their name and feel nothing particular. You pass a place that used to hollow you out and find it's just a place. These moments should feel like relief. Sometimes they do. But sometimes they create a strange, almost guilty anxiety, because the attachment, as painful as it was, had become familiar. It had become part of your identity, and releasing it means releasing a version of yourself, even a suffering version that you'd grown accustomed to. Let these moments arrive without analysis. You don't need to understand a breakthrough to accept it. Just breathe, notice, and allow yourself to receive it. The witness consciousness. As your healing deepens, you'll develop an increasingly stable inner observer, a part of you that can watch attachment feelings arise and pass without being swept away by them. This witnessing self notices, interesting, I'm feeling the pull toward them today. I wonder what triggered it. It observes, there's longing arising in my chest right now. I can feel it without following it. It acknowledges, this is a harder day. That's okay. Harder days are part of this. The witness doesn't fight the feelings. It doesn't indulge them. It simply observes them with the calm steadiness of someone who knows that weather is not the same as climate. A storm passing through is not evidence that storms are permanent. Developing your inner witness is, ultimately, the practice of becoming the most grounded, stable, trustworthy presence in your own life. Chapter 12. Loving without losing yourself. The blueprint for healthy connection. There will come a time, perhaps sooner than you think, when you want to open your heart to someone new. And when that time comes, you will bring everything you've learned here with you, not as baggage, but as wisdom, not as walls, but as discernment. This chapter is about loving in a way that doesn't cost you yourself. Secure attachment begins within the most important shift you can make before entering any new relationship is this. Stop looking for someone to make you feel secure and start building security within yourself. Secure attachment is not about finding the right person. It's about becoming someone who can remain grounded even within the vulnerability of genuine intimacy. It's about trusting that whatever happens, connection or loss, closeness or distance, you will be okay. Not because nothing will hurt, but because you know you can survive hurt and grow from it. This internal security is what you've been building throughout this entire process. Every time you soothed yourself instead of seeking external relief, every time you redirected your attention back to your own life, every time you chose yourself, you were building the foundation of genuinely secure attachment. Know your attachment style. If you experienced obsessive attachment, you almost certainly have an anxious attachment style, a deep-seated sensitivity to perceived abandonment, a tendency to seek excessive reassurance, a pattern of interpreting ambiguous signals as threatening. Understanding this about yourself is not a condemnation. It's a map. When you know your default patterns, you can recognize them as they arise, rather than being unconsciously driven by them. You can pause, identify what's actually happening, and make a conscious choice rather than an automatic reaction. The independence before interdependence principle. Before seeking serious romantic connection, ensure that you can genuinely do these things. Soothe yourself when distressed without requiring someone else's presence. Enjoy extended periods of solitude without anxiety. Pursue goals and interests that are entirely your own. Maintain friendships that don't revolve around a romantic relationship. When you can meet your own fundamental needs for comfort, for stimulation, for identity, for meaning, you enter relationships from a position of wholeness rather than need, and that changes everything about the quality of connection you're capable of creating. Recognizing what you're actually looking for. Be honest with yourself about what you've been attracted to in the past. Emotional unavailability, intensity that comes with instability, the electric uncertainty of not knowing where you stand. These patterns feel like chemistry. They feel like depth, but they are often just familiarity, the echo of an earlier relational template your nervous system learned to call love. Green flags don't always feel exciting at first. Consistency can feel boring when you're calibrated to chaos. Reliability can feel underwhelming when you're accustomed to intensity. Emotional availability can feel almost too easy when you've been trained to work desperately for scraps of connection. Give green flags time. Let calm build into genuine safety. Let consistency become the foundation of real trust. The relationship that doesn't make your nervous system scream may be the one that actually heals it. The pacing strategy. Take relationships at a pace that allows your rational mind to participate alongside your emotional one. The early weeks and months of a new connection produce neurochemical states, dopamine flooding, oxytocin bonding, norepinephrine intensity that are genuinely intoxicating and genuinely unreliable as a basis for major decisions. Maintain your own life. Keep your own activities, your own friendships, your own rhythms. Let the relationship be part of your life rather than the organizing principle of it. This isn't withholding. This is wisdom. Communication as foundation. The ability to say what you need, express what you feel, and discuss what isn't working directly, clearly, and without either aggression or withdrawal is the single most important skill in sustainable relationship. Practice it in every relationship you have, not just romantic ones. Build the muscle before you need it. And equally important, listen to what the other person is actually communicating, not just what you hope they're saying. This is one of the places where past attachment patterns most reliably resurface. The tendency to hear what we need to hear rather than what's actually being said. Healthy love does not complete you. It witnesses you. The person you want is not someone who fills the parts of you that feel empty. The person you want is someone who sees the complete person you already are and chooses to build something alongside that person. Not someone who becomes your reason for existing, but someone whose existence enriches yours. That distinction between completing and witnessing, between needing and choosing, is the entire difference between obsessive attachment and genuine love. You are now capable of the latter. Chapter 13. Creating a life that belongs entirely to you. There is a version of victory over obsessive attachment that most people don't talk about. And it's the most complete version available. It's not just releasing this person. It's not just healing the wound. It's building something so genuinely fulfilling, so authentically aligned with who you are, that the absence of any single person, no matter how significant they once felt, cannot threaten the foundation of your life. Psychologists call this intrinsic worth, a life that generates meaning, satisfaction, and joy from within, rather than depending on external validation, romantic partnership, or anyone else's approval to feel whole. This is what we're building in this chapter, the life audit. Before you can build something better, you need an honest picture of where you actually are. Take a piece of paper and rate each of the following areas of your life on a scale of 1 to 10. Not how you want them to be, not how they were before this attachment consumed you, but how they genuinely are right now. Career satisfaction, physical health, mental and emotional well-being, quality of friendships, financial security, creative expression, personal growth, contribution to something beyond yourself. Look at those numbers without judgment. They are not a verdict. They are a map, showing you exactly where your life has been quietly starved of attention while your focus was elsewhere. Every area scoring below 6 is an area where your actual life has been waiting patiently for you to return. The vision beyond romance. Most people, when they imagine their ideal future, instinctively center it around a relationship. The right partner, the right love story, the family they want to build. I want to invite you to temporarily remove romantic partnership from the vision entirely, not because it doesn't matter, but because it has been dominating your vision at the expense of everything else. If romantic love were guaranteed, if you knew with complete certainty that genuine, healthy, mutual love was coming to you in due course, what else would you want your life to look like? Where would you live? What work would you do? What would you be creating? What kind of person would you be proud to have become? What experiences would you collect? Who would be in your life? This vision, the one that exists independent of any romantic outcome, is your actual life. It's the canvas that a relationship, when it comes, will add color to. But the canvas needs to exist first, and right now, it needs your full attention. The energy investment principle. Think about where your mental and emotional energy has been going for the past weeks, months, perhaps years. The obsessive thinking, the hoping, the analyzing, the checking, the rehearsing. That is an enormous amount of energy. Directed elsewhere, it is capable of producing extraordinary things. Every hour you spent ruminating about someone who wasn't thinking about you was an hour not spent developing a skill, deepening a friendship, building a project, improving your health, or creating something meaningful. This isn't guilt, it's an invitation, because that energy is still available to you. It hasn't disappeared, it's just been misdirected. The moment you begin genuinely redirecting it toward your career, your creative life, your physical health, your intellectual growth, your relationships with people who are actually present, you will feel the compound effect almost immediately. Progress in one area generates momentum in another. Confidence built in the gym shows up in the boardroom. Creativity developed in a new hobby unlocks problem-solving at work. Friendships deepened through genuine presence provide emotional support that makes everything else more sustainable. Career as identity anchor. One of the most underestimated tools for healing from obsessive attachment is professional engagement, not as a form of workaholism or avoidance, but as a genuine source of identity, competence, and forward momentum. When you direct the mental energy previously spent on obsessive thinking toward your professional development, the results can be remarkable. Not because work is more important than love, but because meaningful work provides something that romantic obsession never can: tangible evidence of your own capability. Projects completed, skills developed, problem solved, recognition earned through your own effort. Whether this means pursuing a promotion, starting a creative project, developing a new professional skill, or simply showing up with more presence and intention than you have been, invest in your work as an investment in your sense of self. Physical transformation as proof of principle. There is something uniquely powerful about physical transformation during emotional healing. Not because changing your appearance will change how anyone else feels about you, that's not the point, but because the body is where we actually live, and caring for it deliberately is one of the most tangible acts of self-respect available. When you commit to improving your physical health through movement that challenges you, sleep that restores you, nutrition that fuels you, You are doing something psychologically profound. You are proving to yourself through action that you are worth taking care of, that you are worth investing in, that your well-being matters independent of whether anyone else recognizes it. That proof accumulates, and it becomes the foundation of genuine self-worth, not the fragile, externally dependent kind that collapsed when this person withdrew, but the solid, evidence-based kind that no one can take from you. Creative expression as emotional processing. If you have ever wanted to write, paint, make music, build something, cook seriously, garden with intention, photograph the world around you, now is the time. Not because you're talented enough or experienced enough or because anyone will see it, but because creativity is one of the most powerful forms of emotional processing available to human beings. When you create, you externalize what's internal. You take the chaotic, wordless experience of your inner life and give it form. And in giving it form, you gain perspective on it. You move from being inside the experience to being able to see it, to work with it, to transform it into something that has value beyond the pain that generated it. Some of the most profound creative work in human history was born from exactly this kind of suffering. Not because suffering is necessary for creativity, it isn't, but because when we are in pain and we choose to create rather than collapse, we discover depths in ourselves we never knew existed. Service and contribution. There is a specific kind of healing that only comes from directing your attention toward someone else's struggle. When you are consumed by your own pain, the world contracts to the size of your wound. Service expands it again. Find something to contribute to, a cause, a community, a person who needs what you have to offer. Volunteer your time, your skills, your presence. Mentor someone who is facing challenges you have navigated. Show up for someone who is where you were 6 months ago. This is not selfless martyrdom. This is one of the most effective forms of self-healing available. Because when you help someone else move through darkness, you simultaneously remind yourself of your own capacity to do the same. And you build the kind of meaning that transcends personal circumstances. The compound life. The most important insight in this chapter is this: you're not trying to find one thing that replaces this person. You're building a life made of many things that are each independently valuable. A career that engages your mind. A body you're proud to inhabit. Friendships that feed your soul. Creative work that expresses your inner life. Physical experiences that remind you what it feels like to be alive and present. Contribution that connects you to something larger than yourself. Spiritual or philosophical practices that provide a foundation of meaning beneath everything else. When your life is built from multiple sources of genuine value, no single loss, no matter how significant, can threaten the whole structure. Relationships become additive rather than foundational. They enrich a life that is already full rather than completing a life that feels empty. This is the life that no one person can compete with, not because it's designed to make anyone jealous, but because it's designed to make you whole. Chapter 14. When they come back. Protecting your progress. Without closing your heart, just as you begin to feel genuinely free, just as the obsessive thinking has quieted and your life has started feeling like your own again, the universe has a particular sense of irony. They reach out. A text, a like on a photo you posted, a message through a mutual friend, an accidental meeting that doesn't feel entirely accidental, and in the space of 30 seconds, every feeling you thought you'd released comes flooding back with astonishing, disorienting intensity. This chapter is about navigating that moment without losing everything you've built. Why they often return. At this exact moment, this timing is not coincidence as often as it seems. When you were consumed by obsessive attachment, when you were constantly reaching toward them, thinking about them, sending them energy, they could feel your availability. Your pursuit, even when silent, communicated that you were waiting. When you genuinely begin to heal and redirect your energy toward your own life, something shifts in the relational field. The pursuit stops. The energy withdraws. And for many people, the withdrawal of someone's focused attention is more compelling than its presence ever was. Their return, in other words, may have less to do with a genuine change of heart and more to do with the fact that they noticed you were finally letting go. This is important information. Hold it gently, but clearly. The difference between genuine return and ego retrieval. Genuine interest in rebuilding something looks like direct, honest communication about what they want, acknowledgement of what didn't work before, evidence, not just words, of personal growth or changed circumstances, patience with your process, and respect for your boundaries, behavior that is consistent over time rather than intense in a single moment. Ego retrieval looks like vague messages that invite hope without making any real commitment, contact that arrives when they're lonely, bored, or facing difficulty in another relationship. Communication that expects you to pick up exactly where you left off. Behavior that is intense initially and then fades when they feel reassured that you're still available. Learn to distinguish between the two and know that in the immediate flood of feeling that their contact triggers, you will not be able to distinguish them clearly, which is why the next principle is non-negotiable. The 48-hour rule. When they make contact, do not respond immediately. Not because you're playing games, because you are not in a state to make a clear-headed decision about what response aligns with your actual values and well-being. Give yourself at minimum 48 hours. Feel everything that arises without acting on it. Journal about it. Talk to someone who knows you well and can reflect back what they observe. Ask yourself, if I respond the way I want to right now, what am I responding from? Genuine desire or the relief of finally having the hit I've been craving? The answer to that question matters enormously because one of those motivations serves your actual life. The other one just serves the addiction. Protecting what you've built. If you do choose to engage with their return, whether for closure, genuine exploration, or something else, do not abandon the practices and commitments that have been building your healing. Maintain your exercise routine, keep your plans with friends, continue your creative work. Stay in contact with your support network. These are not things to set aside while you navigate this situation. They are the very foundation that makes navigating it possible without being swept away. Their return is a test, but not of how much you love them. It's a test of how much you love yourself. Deciding from strength, not from longing. The question of whether to re-engage with this person in any capacity should be answered from your strongest, clearest self, not from your most desperate one. Ask yourself, have they demonstrated genuine change or just genuine desire to have you back. Have the fundamental incompatibilities that led to pain before been addressed, or just set aside temporarily? Does this person's presence in your life add to your well-being, or does it consistently destabilize it? Are you considering this because it genuinely excites you and aligns with your values, or because saying no feels unbearably final? Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for them is to decline the return, not with bitterness, not with punishment, but with clarity. I have built something here. I know who I am now, and this is not what I want. That choice, made freely from a place of genuine strength rather than fear, is one of the most powerful expressions of your transformation available to you. Chapter 15. The Transformed Life, Who You Become on the Other Side. You made it here, and I want you to notice something. The person reading these words right now is not the same person who read the first page. That person was consumed by someone else. This person, you, right now, has been doing the work of returning to themselves. That is not a small thing. That is one of the most significant things a human being can do. The freedom you've earned, emotional sovereignty, the ability to feel deeply without being controlled by your feelings, to love without losing yourself, to need without becoming desperate, is not something you're born with. It's something you build through exactly the kind of deliberate, sometimes painful, always worthwhile work you've been doing. You can now sit with difficult emotions without being overwhelmed by them. You can notice the pull of old patterns without automatically following them. You can encounter a trigger without disappearing into a spiral for hours. These might sound like small gains. They are not. They represent a fundamental reorganization of how your nervous system relates to the world. The relationship with solitude. Something has shifted in how you experience being alone. Where solitude once felt like an absence, a void shaped exactly like the person you were missing, it has begun to feel like something else, like space, like possibility, like the place where you can actually hear yourself think. You have learned that being alone and being lonely are entirely different experiences. Loneliness is the pain of unwanted solitude. Solitude, chosen, inhabited with intention, is something closer to freedom. It is the space in which you discover what you actually think, what you actually want, what you actually feel when no one else's presence is organizing your experience. This relationship with your own company is one of the most valuable things you could have developed. It will serve every relationship you have for the rest of your life. The new definition of love, your understanding of love has been fundamentally revised by this experience. You know now, in a way you couldn't have known before, the difference between love and obsession, between intimacy and codependency, between choosing someone and needing them. You understand that real love doesn't feel like drowning. It doesn't feel like a constant, low-grade emergency. It doesn't make you smaller or more anxious or less yourself. Real love feels like expansion, like being seen clearly and accepted completely, like growing alongside someone without either of you needing the other to be different than they are. You are now capable of that kind of love, perhaps for the first time. The resilience that cannot be taken. You have survived the dissolution of your sense of self and rebuilt it from the inside, without anyone's help, except your own commitment and the practices you chose to return to again and again, even on the days when none of it felt like it was working. That is not a small kind of resilience. That is the deepest kind, the kind that knows it has already survived the worst and carries that knowledge forward like a quiet, unshakable confidence. Job losses, friendship changes, health challenges, future heartbreaks, none of these will ever feel quite as threatening again, not because they won't hurt, but because you have evidence now. Evidence that you can be completely undone and completely rebuild yourself. Evidence that your foundation is stronger than any storm that passes through it. The most important relationship. Looking back from where you stand now, you can see something that was invisible at the beginning. The person you were obsessively attached to was never actually the love of your life. The love of your life is the relationship you have built with yourself through this process, the commitment to your own healing, the willingness to feel everything without numbing, the courage to rebuild your identity from scratch, the decision made again and again on difficult days to choose yourself. Every relationship you have from this point forward, romantic, platonic, professional, will be built on this foundation. And because the foundation is real, because it was earned rather than assumed, it will hold in ways that your previous attachments never could. You are already whole. This is the truth that all 15 chapters have been building toward. The truth that obsessive attachment obscures and that healing reveals. You do not need to be chosen by any particular person to be worthy of love. You do not need a relationship to be complete. You do not need external circumstances to align perfectly in order to experience genuine, deep, lasting happiness. You are already whole. You always were. The attachment convinced you otherwise, made you feel like something essential was missing, like you were half a person searching for the other half. But that was the addiction talking. That was the neural pathway. That was the evolutionary alarm system that cannot tell the difference between genuine loss and perceived loss. The whole person was here the entire time, a little buried perhaps, a little forgotten, but here. Go live as that person now, fully, unapologetically, without waiting for anyone's permission or presence to make it real. You are free. The journey of letting go does not end with forgetting someone. It ends with remembering yourself.